Hey, welcome back to a new installment of the Wide Right Podcast. Manny Navarro of The Athletic here, joined today by Adam Lichtenstein of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, also the future general manager of the New York Yankees. If you remember Adam saying that was his lifelong dream the last time we had him on the show in April. How's that pursuit going for you, Adam?
So far I have not made any strides. I did buy this All-Star game hat though, which
All
I
right,
like.
looks pretty
Um,
fat.
so
Yeah.
yeah, small steps. And I did get up to a game beginning of the month, or I guess now about a month ago. Got to see an Aaron Judge homer, but they lost that day. So maybe I'm just bad luck. Maybe I should stay away from Yankee Stadium.
Well, if you're going to be the GM, you got to be at Yankee Stadium every time they play. So it doesn't hurt to go up there. You and
Yeah.
I, by the way, I noticed are wearing, if you combine the colors, they're kind of Gator type colors, orange and I've got the Carolina blue, although the Gator blue is a little darker than this.
hmm
Together we look like we're Gator fans. Speaking of the Gators, we're gonna have kickoff here between Miami and Florida in 30 days in the swamp. It's going to be wonderful. No air conditioning because the media sit outside uh, at the stadium in the concrete. I can tell you, I'm trying to get you ready for this because it's going to be disgusting. So bring some. I'm bringing an ice cooler with some beers. I'll be sitting up there hanging out with some of my friends, watching the game, writing about it afterward. We should
I
we
hope you
should
bring enough for everybody.
yeah, I am. I'm definitely bringing you a beer so that we can have a good time up there. Um, but we're closing in on that, Adam. We're going to talk about what's happened so far. Miami's gotten through two practices since camp opened. We had media days. We had the preseason poll come out in the ACC. The Hurricanes were picked third. Got some mailbag questions we're going to get to. But first, Adam, this is the most important topic that we're going to talk about all day. What did you do for summer vacation? Because
What did I do for?
yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
do
go ahead.
anything super exciting, but what did you do for summer vacation?
Um, Took a couple trips for a couple weddings. Went over to Texas for my brother-in-law's wedding. Then to New York about 2 weeks later for my cousin's wedding. Like I mentioned to you earlier, went to a Yankees game, which was fun. Came back and then basically I've been playing CFB 25 like everyone else for the past like 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Um, Having a good time with that. Cam Ward, he's thrown some terrible interceptions. It's definitely not me. It's all on Cam. I got to tell him now, like it's your fault. I've lost a couple games on terrible picks. But been playing that. Went up to Orlando the other day, watched my soccer team, Manchester City, play Barcelona, which was really cool, really fun. And then now, we're getting into the thick of it. It's time for fall camp, and I don't know how players are practicing in this weather, but they're managing, and I'm managing to report in it somehow.
Yeah, it's summer vacation has ended for us college football writers. Very, very busy over at the Athletic, working a bunch of different stories, preseason type stuff. Was in Charlotte last week. I tried to make my work trip to Charlotte last week a mini family vacation. I took the wife and kids with me. I took my daughters and my wife to Great Wolf Lodge and lost my 9-year-old for 45 minutes.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's always fun when you have to call the wife and say, guess who I lost? Our daughter. That went over well. She was hanging out in the wave pool, decided to hide from me because she didn't want to come back upstairs. I had to do a my radio spot with Big O, and I had told her, I said, Olivia, 2:30, we gotta go back. I gotta go upstairs. I promise you we'll come back to the water park when I'm done. She wasn't having any of that, Adam, so she said, I'm gonna hide from dad, and I couldn't find her. And by the time security arrived and was helping me comb the entire water park for her, her sister also showed up, and immediately Jocelyn found her. So we were able to find her. She's not dead. We brought her home with us, Adam. That was
You, you,
the best part of the
now,
vacation.
now you know to do your radio hits from the wave pool.
Yes, I got to be in the wave pool to do my spots. Look, Miami, the Hurricanes, they're done with their summer vacation. They're out there. They're not in any wave pools. They're sweating out there in the heat. It is super hot. This is probably one of the hottest summers I think I've ever experienced in South Florida. Global
I
warming,
try
right?
to yeah, I try to think of it. I try not to think of it as the hottest summer. 'Cause I grew up in South Florida. Not the hottest summer I've ever experienced, but the coldest summer I'll ever experience again.
That's true.
Try to be
Uh,
optimistic.
Yes, it is hot. But they're working hard. Mario Cristobal has them, I think, in shorts and shoulder pads and spiders and all that kind of stuff. No pads yet. There will be some hitting soon. We're gonna get to that. But First couple practices, media day. Let's start with practice. You were out there today. What was your impression, just sort of your early takeaways from watching this team actually get on the field and stretch and go through drills?
I mean, obviously they're going to go 12-0. No, it's I mean they're like you said they're in shorts and they're not tackling, not doing anything like that. So it's hard to glean too much from it. I mean, I was there today, and I mean I liked how some of the footwork looked. I when I was watching cornerback drills, I was watching Kevin Beard kind of show wide receivers how like I guess proper technique for yeah, kind of like deking cornerbacks. And it's like I like watching him coach. He's a fun guy to watch coach. Him and Gidry, I think, are really fun to watch. Just watch them take players through drills. But you know how it is. You get to watch a couple periods. You don't get to see everything. You don't get to see the real fun stuff. You get to watch mostly individual drills. So, I mean, it's only day two. So it's hard to take too much from what we've seen. But nothing's changed my prior views on how this team's going to be, and I think the team's going to be pretty good. So far, they look pretty good.
Yeah, Monday I was out there for media day. You were out there for media day. We got a chance to talk to players, offensive players and defensive players, about 45 minutes each, and then the assistant coaches came out. I did a probably the only story I'll be writing about Miami now that camp has started for the next month on my takeaways. Just some strong opinions based on conversations and kind of positional type outlooks. So I figured we could regurgitate some of that stuff, share notes, discuss sort of a position by position look. We
Mm,
did have some new guys out there. You sent me the roster. Thank you for doing that. You sent me
yeah.
a screenshot of the roster because there were some guys I wasn't sure what number they were wearing in terms of new arrivals. Let's start with defensive lineman Simeon Barrow, because you and I were next to him. Interesting summer for Simeon Barrow,
Mm.
right? Transfers to Miami, 30 game starter with the Spartans. He's one of the six new faces that they picked up after the spring. And there was a chance that Simeon Barrow was going to leave Miami after not being here very long. There were reports he got into the or was going to try to get back into the transfer portal, leave. There were some SEC schools, I think, that were messing with him, trying to get him to leave the program. You and I were there. We talked to him. Didn't really want to address any of that stuff. When I was in Charlotte, I asked Mario Cristobal about it, and he said, "Well, the off season's too long. You guys got too much free time on your hands. You generate stories that aren't real, et cetera, et cetera." But this is an important question, Adam. Does the locker room accept him back? And I think that's something to think about as we go forward here. Looks like they are. Haven't heard anything negative. Looks like he's trying to put his best foot forward. But how big of a storyline should you, me, and everybody else who covers this team make the whole Simeon Barrow offseason fiasco?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing. Like obviously, whether or not if he's accepted by his teammates and stuff, it's a thing. If we see Simeon Barrow, sitting by himself, at or after halftime, in Gainesville, then it's like, okay, maybe there's some problems here. But the fact that he's on the team, that regard, with all the stuff that happened, and I know there's rumors flying around, and he didn't really, like you said, he didn't really want to talk about exactly what happened. He's here now. I think the fact that he's on the team says a lot. Not just about his talent, but the fact that they could have found another. They brought in 11 other defensive linemen. They didn't need that 12th guy. They didn't want him. They wouldn't have him here. So the fact that he's here, he's on the team, he's in practice and everything, probably just says everything kind of you need to know. Like the team's bringing him back, and like I said, if we see him sitting by himself every game, then we'll know it's an issue. But for in the meantime, he's here and he's practicing and he's part of the team, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'll say this: there's no question the strength of this team is the defensive line, right? Like the depth that they have at that position. They got C.J. Clark, they got Marley Cook in the spring, and Lance Guidry seems really excited about that group. I mean, you've got Ruben Bain back, you got Akeem Mesidor back. You added Elijah Alston, Tyler Barron, you picked up in the transfer portal, who looks like a monster. You've got Barrow, Ahmad Moten. Josh Horton was a four-star kid. Miami got late in the process. He's healthy now. And then you got all those freshmen that came in the door. Um, from your takeaway defensive line wise, what was it? What was the big takeaway from media day and maybe some of the conversations that you had?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it. Like, there's depth. There's a lot of depth, and it's the good problem to have is that where do you play all these guys? You know, I mean, Ruben Bain, obviously, you know, arguably one of the best defensive linemen, not just in the ACC, maybe could be one of the best defensive linemen in the country this year if he lives up to, if he improves on his season last year. And it makes you forget that Akeem Mesidor was pretty dang good in 2022.
Yeah.
Um, and he got off to, I think, a decent start last year before he got hurt. He was dealing with those foot issues. Sorry, my dogs are jostling and hitting the table and stuff. Um, but yeah, Akeem Mesidor, now that he's got his specially, made cleats, like he was out there practicing, which was good to see. Like he's really good. Austin had like I think one of the best PFF grades among defensive ends in the country last year. Even if it's at Marshall, that's still an accomplishment. Barron is good, and those two the tackles they brought in before the spring, Cook and Clark were good players at their old places. Like there's depth, and then like you said, the freshmen like a 5-star in Justin Scott, a 4-star in Artavius Jones, guys like Booker Pickett and Marquise Lightfoot on the edge. Like there's a lot of talent in that room. They're gonna have a hard time getting everyone playing time, and that's why. And that's a good thing because defensive line, you take such a beating, you're going to want to rotate guys in, throughout a game. And if you can limit guys in their snap counts and just you can get the most you can get them at their most effective instead of wearing them down throughout the
Yeah.
game. And that's gonna be big, and there's always injuries and things like that. You hope there aren't, but there always is. So the fact that if somebody goes down, if CJ Clark gets hurt, okay, maybe Justin Scott steps up. He's got a world of talent, like, so there's a lot of guys there who can fill in without really missing much of a beat.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point here. And you think about the great teams in college football. To me, it always starts with defensive line. Every team that wins the national championship has a legitimate dude at the defensive tackle position, a guy who creates havoc. They've got edge rushers. They've got guys that put pressure on the quarterback. To me, that is like you look at every national championship winning program. Michigan last year had some ridiculous dudes on their defensive line. Go back, years before that with Alabama and Georgia. Like Miami's greatest teams, the one that won national championships. I mean, you look up and down. It all starts with defensive linemen, and I think that's the one thing you got to give Mario Cristobal credit for, is he didn't have like defensive linemen just don't grow on trees, and you have to kind of recruit the position, develop guys. It takes a while. Same thing with offensive linemen. You got to develop guys over a couple years, and he didn't really have time to do that, right? So he had to go into the transfer portal and just pluck guys off of other people's rosters, and they did that, and they got a good collection of talent together. And so Miami's defensive line, you look at it, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here where I got all my charts and information. Of the top 7, 8 guys, 6 of them are transfers. So there's going to be, actually 7 of the 8 guys that I got on the two deep here are transfers. So uh, you count Akeem Mesidor from a couple years ago. That's the way you have to build it sometimes as you're adjusting your roster. And they recruited the heck out of the position this last cycle. I think Armando Blunt, he's going to be a stud. I think Cole McConaughey is going to be a stud. Marcus Lightfoot, Justin Scott, who you mentioned, Booker Pickett, like guys were bragging about Artavius Jones, how he's the strongest kid on the team. He just got there. So they've got legitimate talent, but those guys are all freshmen. And
Mhm.
I think it would have been a mistake for Miami to go into this season saying, well, we're just going to play Justin Scott 40 snaps a game, or we're going to play Booker Pickett 35 snaps a game. We're not going to go out and get veterans. They had to get veterans. Mario was forced into that corner because he's had to build it that way through the portal through these first couple years. And now he's finally gotten the kind of defensive lineman, I think, that, through the high school ranks that you can spend time developing, and then when they're ready, unleash them to the world.
Yeah, and one, I want to. You kind of said everything that I was thinking.
Hmm.
I do think I don't know what it is, just a feeling. I think Cole McConaughey is going to develop into a really good player.
Hmm.
I just think. I mean, I know high school stats don't mean anything. I know that, but he like had like 35 sacks last year in Alabama. Like he's not playing in like upstate New York or something where there's nobody. He's playing
Right.
in Alabama. Like there's competition there and there's talent there, and like he put up numbers and. maybe he won't be, starter this year or even next year, but maybe 2, 3 years down the road, this is a guy who might be it's a long play, maybe kind of kid who develops into a pretty solid player. And I also kind of like Dalen Russell. I saw him play a bit in high school, and he had other guys who were more highly rated than him on those defenses at
Yeah.
Columbus, and he was the guy who I saw playing the state championship game. He was the one making plays. He was the one with the motor chasing after the quarterback, getting after it. Like, I mean, now granted, that's one game a year and a half, 2 years ago now, but like he really impressed me.
Yeah, every one of the guys who was recruited, all 8 defensive linemen that they signed this last cycle are Miami guys. Like having covered this team and grown up in South Florida, like they look like Miami defensive linemen. I think when Mario walked in the door, and this is something he and I talked about, I was able to have like 15, 20 minutes by myself with him up in Charlotte. Uh, the roster when he got here was not a Miami roster. And I knew that. I think a lot of people knew that. It's not to the standard that when Miami was winning championships was at. But the tough part for I think fans understand is you don't just flip a switch, right? Like you don't just come in and all of a sudden sign a bunch of freshmen and they're good and they're contributors right away. So you have to supplement it with transfers. It takes a couple years, and now he's got it. He's got the kind of guys that look like Miami defensive linemen. I think Ahmad Moten, who's this is his third year. He was one of the first one Mario brought in at D tackle. He is the kind of guy who can, he may not start. He may be playing 15, 20 snaps a game, but when guys like Marley Cook leave and when CJ Clark runs out of eligibility and Simeon Barrow is gone next year, Amon Moten's the kind of guy that can move into your starting spot, and that'll help Justin Scott. That'll help Armando Blunt. That'll help all the other younger guys who will be in year two not feel like they've got, oh man, year two, I've got to play right away. I got to play a bunch of snaps. No, you can still sort of be eased in. So you have to layer it. And I think that's something Mario and I talked a lot about, that when you rebuild a roster, you have to layer it, right? There has to be a group of second and third year guys. There has to be really good freshmen. There has to be fifth year seniors. It's a tough act to juggle. And I think to me, I give him a lot of credit for what he's done with the defensive line. Because I think between Jason Taylor, and some of the other coaches on this staff, they've done a really good job of just building it to what it's supposed to look like. And that is going to take Miami places in the long run.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the other place to see that is also on the offensive line,
Yeah.
where you compare the offensive line now to where it was 2, 3 years ago. I mean, like it just seems like it's a whole different line. I mean, you got Cooper and Rivers and Maui Noah returning, who are all very good last year. You have Zach Carpenter slotting right in for Matt Lee, and then you have your pick of everyone else for left guard. Like, the trenches is what Cristobal's really emphasized since he got here, and it's not the sexy part of the game, but it works. It's important, and he's done it so far. Like, and it seems I think this year it'll pay dividends.
Yeah, and one thing to note here with as we transition, we'll talk about the offensive line too. A couple guys medically retired. I know I had some fans like ripping me on one of the last podcasts I did. Did you know this guy is not here anymore? It's like, well, now we can say it officially. Zion Nelson is medically retired. I think Michael Redding medically retired. There's guys that have kind of been hanging around the roster as they finish school and graduate, that have been around the program that until Mario Cristobal says, hey, they're not a part of the program anymore, you and I just can't come out and write and say, hey, this is what we're hearing.
Yeah,
It kind of has to be official. So now it's official. And when I did the scholarship count today, I think I got them right at 85 or around 84. There might even be one spot left, depending on what they do with special teams guys. But the point is, some guys have retired in the offseason. One of them was Zion Nelson, who just could never, you know, get healthy again after those series of knee injuries. Um, and so looking at the offensive line, you mentioned, they've got 4 starters, guys that have a bunch of starts under their belt. Jalen Rivers at left tackle. You got Zach Carpenter at center. You got Inez Cooper at right guard. You got Francis Mauigoa at right tackle. And then after that, with Zion Nelson gone, you've only got one other guy on this roster on the offensive line who has started a college game. Actually, two. I'm sorry, two. Ryan Rodriguez. I forgot about Ryan Rodriguez's bowl game start, and then Luis Cristobal. That's it. So you've got 6 guys with college starting experience. Miami, though, didn't want to go out into the transfer portal and load up on guys at that position because a lot of the younger players that they have are second year guys. Like they're not true freshmen. So you've got Samson Okunlola, you've got Antonio Tribb. You've got Bruno Kinsler, Frankie Tinalau. They've been in the system for a year. So in the event that one of those guys go down, you're not throwing a true freshman to the fire. You're throwing a guy who's been in the system for a while. You've also got Markel Bell, who you got out of the JUCO ranks. So there's more options. So that's why I think the offensive line build, when we just finished spending a lot of time talking about defensive line, I think that's why it looks different than the offensive line build.
Yeah, exactly. And you forgot Matt McCoy, who I think will be in that mix at left
Yeah,
guard as well. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say he hasn't started a game yet, but it seemed from talking to Alex Mirabal that that's pretty much set in stone. He's gonna be the left guard. I know that they're gonna talk about competition, and Mario rightfully doesn't want guys to be unmotivated in camp, but I would be shocked if Matthew McCoy is not the starter
Mhm.
game one against Florida. But I think, my general point though, Adam, is both positions, offensive and defensive line, are a good place, and that's why I think Miami can win the ACC this year because they've built it the right way.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. If I had I wasn't at ACC Media Day, so I didn't have a vote. But I would have been tempted to pick Miami to win. I don't know if I would have pulled the trigger, but I'd have certainly been tempted. And the trenches are a big reason why. Cam Ward, I'm sure, well, everyone's talking about him, that he's the big thing this year. Like, he's another reason why. Like, I just would be very, very tempted to pick them to win the ACC because I think those trenches are built up to. I mean, I think we're at where Cristobal wants them to be at. I think this is what he wants it to look like, the production he wants from them. I think even if you lose a guy or two, I think there's depth there. I think there's talent there. Like, it's what you want. Like, I mean, we'll see for sure when they take the field in a month, but judging from what I saw in the spring and what a lot of these players, the players who transferred in, like their track records at their old schools, like they've got the talent, they've got experience, they've got depth. Like, I don't know what else you could ask for.
Not that I'm looking for bad things to say about Miami because I'm really not. But if like we talked about Simeon Barrow and well, okay, well maybe that's an issue for the defensive line. Like how is he accepted? I think if there's one that I have a question about heading into the year, and I didn't include this in my 10 takeaways for the Athletic, it's Zach Carpenter because he is the one transfer they did add. He's from it came from Indiana, I think signed with Michigan out of high school, graduate transfer kid from 2019, really quiet. He is the complete opposite of Matt Lee. And I think from a personality perspective, Matt Lee last year made me feel like, oh, this guy's gonna, bring everybody together. Everybody's gonna get fired up around him. But the one thing that's interesting about Zach Carpenter, and one thing that Alex Mirabal talked about, is you don't always have to be a big time character with the media or show a ton of emotion to be a guy that people respect in the locker room. And I think what Alex Mirabal tried to express to me in our conversation at Media Day was Zach Carpenter's a lot like him. Alex Mirabal said he was very reserved, very quiet, wasn't necessarily emotional on the sideline, but he earned the respect of his teammates. How worried are you, Adam, about that drastic change in terms of personality? Because centers are supposed to be the guys that everybody on the offensive line respects, right? We think of Brett Romberg, big, loud personality for the national championship winning team in 2001. Zach Carpenter is not that guy. He likes to go fishing. He likes to go shooting. Like those are his hobbies. Those are the things he likes to do. He is not a loud, boisterous kind of guy. What do you think of Zach Carpenter?
Oh, maybe he opens up a little bit more when he's out fishing or something. But yeah, like you said, like I mean, like bigger change in character, or at least outgoingness between Matt Lee and Zach Carpenter. It's just it's a big swerve. But I think it would be a bigger issue if it was a younger offensive line. But you got Jalen Rivers, who's a veteran. He's been here for 5 years now. I think it's his fifth year. Maui Noah started a year. Inez Cooper started a year and a half already. So you've got guys who know what they're doing. And Jalen Rivers is certainly also a leader on that line at left tackle. So if it was a younger line, guys who maybe there were two or three guys who didn't have starting experience, or they were starting a true freshman or something like that, then I might have a little more wariness about it. But I think one, I mean, he's been a solid center for Indiana. Like he's done it before. He's not unproven. And the fact that there's just other guys who have experience on the line, I get where people are like, well, he should be like this, but he's not. And so far it's not really been much to his detriment. He played center in the Big Ten. That's not easy.
Yes.
So, I think he's definitely capable if that's how he is, off the field, that's how he is. Maybe on the field, he's a little more vocal, a little more oomphy. I don't know. I can't think of a good word. Maybe he's a little more, I think he said in the spring he has like a quiet rage that comes out on
Yeah,
the field. And hey, great, but like, you don't got to be loud to block somebody,
no.
and to snap the ball. So he's proven he's a capable center. I'm not too concerned about it.
One thing I'll add before we move on, Matthew McCoy is the first player that Alex Mirabal recruited after he got the job at Miami, and a guy that I know he's personally very deeply invested in. So I think as long as Matthew McCoy stays healthy, one thing Alex Mirabal did say to me on Monday was, this is a guy I think all of you will be talking about more than some of the other guys in this offensive line. He thinks he has that kind of potential. So maybe that's
That that
that's what he turns into.
that checks out. I mean, I was thinking about this today because we spoke to Inez Cooper. Inez Cooper is not like he plays next to Francis Mauigoa, who is the top 10 player in the class. Inez
Yeah.
Cooper was very much not. Inez Cooper
Yes.
was a guy like top outside the top 1,000, I think, players in this class.
Yeah.
And look at him now. He's a going into his second full year as a starter. He's good. Like he's
Yeah.
put up good numbers on like PFF and stuff. So I have faith in Cristobal and Mirabal to turn just about anyone into a quality lineman. No matter their rankings, no matter they're capable of doing it.
Yeah, Matthew McCoy was number 736 in the 2022 cycle. Inez Cooper was number 1,150. All right.
Yeah, exactly. And here we are. We're talking about him like, oh yeah, Inez Cooper. You plug him in at right guard. He's great.
Yeah, Miami's, by the way, on their roster, and I chart all this stuff. They've got only three blue chip offensive linemen on the team. Jalen Rivers, who's a 4-star, 5-star Francis Mauigoa, and 5-star Samson Okunlola. The rest of them, all 3-star guys. But you got to trust Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal for identifying the right kind of guys that can play in their system. Let's
Yeah.
move on. Let's move on to the position that I think is probably the most questionable going into the season. And I would say that's safety. You had Cam Kitchens, you had James Williams. Both of those guys left for the NFL. Both of them got drafted. James Williams, I think, in the 7th round. Cam Kitchens in the 3rd round. So you got to replace 2 NFL draft picks. Mish Powell looks like he's going to be the starting free safety. The question is, who becomes the next guy, right? The guy with him out there. I think some people have identified Jaden Harris as the guy who will be starting next to him. Mish was telling me that Jaden might be the fastest guy in the secondary. Back there, you got Markeith Williams, who's also a redshirt sophomore. You got Zaquan Patterson, the true freshman. I guess going into the season, Adam, how worried are you about the safety position? And do you agree that that's probably the biggest question mark?
Yeah, I would say I would just, package it with the cornerbacks and just say the secondary is my biggest question mark. I think Mish Powell playing safety, and that's kind of a stabilizing uh presence. I'm a little less concerned about it knowing that he's gonna be playing there and not nickelback. Although he probably will play a little bit of nickelback too. But the fact that he's a veteran, he's a solid player, as a starter at Washington, a very capable guy, very smart guy. The fact that he'll be back there makes me feel a little better. Like you said, you gotta find another safety, and you got a couple guys to choose from. Jaden Harris, I know Cam Kitchens recommended him very highly. I remember I spoke to him at Pro Day about Jaden Harris, and he said once Jaden, gets that first pick or something under him, he's gonna be great. Like, once he gets that confidence and like gets feels if he gets to
Yeah,
feeling himself a little bit, like he'll be really good in that spot. So if Cam Kitchen says you can do it, then you can probably do it. And I mean, I've seen Zaquan Patterson play for years now because he plays right, down the road from UM. Played at Chaminade Madonna. Special guy, like really talented player, can be really dynamic at safety, and on special teams. Love watching him block punts for Chaminade. But and Mish Powell we spoke to him today as well. Spoke very, very highly of Zaquan Patterson. Said that he thinks that Patterson's going to be a freshman All-American. Thinks that his name's going to be up on in the rafters one day. Like that's not something you just say about anybody. Like he's talented, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see him, not just start to rotate in during the season. If he ends up the starter by the end of the year, like I wouldn't be shocked. And that's not an indictment of anyone else. He's just really good.
yeah.
I know Miami made him a big target and a big priority, and there's a reason for that. It's because he's very, very good. So those are two guys I have my close eye on. We'll see if Markeith Williams gets in. Hasn't really played a ton in the last couple of years. So we'll see if he gets some time and kind of see if they can find someone to fill that other safety spot.
Yeah, I think one thing I will say, getting Diani Hill, you mentioned cornerbacks earlier. Diani Hill obviously played for Chevis Jackson, Miami's new DB's coach at Marshall, also played for Lance Guidry the year before. One thing Diani was telling us at Media Day was, he views himself more as an outside corner. He played 85% of his snaps, I think, at Marshall on the outside, only 15% on the inside. So that may ultimately move some other guys inside. Damari Brown is big and long, but when we asked Guidry about guys in the secondary, he said, "Well, Brown can move inside and play the slot corner, which that is a much more important position in today's college football world, especially when you're playing so many 4 and 5 wide sets. So don't just assume like I did for many many years that outside corner is more important than inside corner. They're just as equally important with the way offensive coordinators work. And I'll also add this. Mario Cristobal, when I did talk to him about defensive backs, and I told him, I said, that's the one position I think everybody kind of has a question mark going into the season. He feels like we're all wrong, and so does Guidry. He feels like they're deeper at cornerback this season than they were a year ago, even though they had Jaden Davis and Corey Couch. They think Damari Brown is NFL type talent. Mario does. Jadis Richard, he has a lot of faith in. Daryl Porter Jr., he calls super consistent and dependable. And then you add Hill, they feel like they've got four legit cornerbacks, with those four. The one thing I will say is I think Guidry wants a fifth guy to emerge, and I think it could be one of the freshmen. I asked him, I said, who is most physically ready? Because it's not easy as a freshman to come in and cover bigger, faster receivers that play at this level and know the offense and have a grasp of it. And he said, and the one guy he identified was OJ Frederick out of St. Thomas Aquinas there in Fort Lauderdale, among the freshman guys. But Guidry did say while he's making plays in practice, in the offseason workouts, you don't really know until he has a playbook in his hand. So they've got four cornerbacks, Adam, but they're looking for a fifth, and I think that's another storyline for us to watch this camp.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I don't think they're untalented. I don't, it's not that I don't think they have capable players, but
Hmm.
it's just that the only one who's done it at Miami so far is Daryl Porter.
Yeah,
Porter really solid last year, really like you said, Cristobal and Guidry said, very consistent. But then you have Meach Powell, who again, did it at Washington against great Pac-12 quarterbacks, like
yeah,
RIP the Pac-12, but did it against great, very good quarterbacks and was very good. So okay, he's
including
proven it.
Cam Ward, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Dione Hill was solid at Marshall, but that's the Sun Belt. I love the Fun Belt, but it's Marshall. And then you have Damari Brown, who, played a good amount last year, but didn't like look incredible. He looked capable, but he was a freshman. Like I'm not holding that against him, but he only started a few games, and then it's guys who have not really been asked to bear the brunt of things, and that's why there's question marks. Like I think the players on their roster are capable and they are talented, but they just have to do it. And if they come out and hold Graham Mertz to 120 yards on August 31st, then okay, great. Like they've done it. Now we have a better idea. It's just a question of having to see it. I think they can have a good secondary. I just don't know yet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is going to be predicated on how good Miami's defensive front is. If those guys are as good as Guidry thinks he is, and they could be the best in the ACC, those edge rushers, between Barron and Bain and Mesidor and that rotation is just pretty sick. Uh, if they're that good, then the secondary is going to look a lot better because the
Yeah.
quarterback's not going to have a whole lot of time to throw the football.
And the quarterbacks, like you look at their schedule, the quarterbacks they face, there aren't a lot of like superstars. You got Graham Mertz, in week one. You've got DJ Uiagalelei at FSU, and then like who else are you worried about? Who
Yeah, I
else?
think I think from my conversations in Charlotte with a lot of the ACC guys, I think Tyler Shuck, who used to be Mario's quarterback at Oregon
Mhm.
before he transferred to Texas Tech, he hasn't been very healthy most of his career. But I'll tell you, there are a lot of people who look at him and say, if he can be healthy, he can be really, really good. And he did lead
Yeah.
Oregon, I think, to a Rose Bowl victory or a Pac-12 title in that COVID year that Mario was there with him. So he's a guy who's been around the
Mhm.
block for a long time. He may be underrated by some of us. And then I would say Syracuse's quarterback, Kyle McCord, who they
Yeah.
who they
True.
just brought in from Ohio State. McCord, one thing I'll share from my conversation with McCord was, he benches, he does 14 reps on the bench. Most quarterbacks don't even mess with the bench because they don't have to do it at the combine. McCord is just one of those. The fact that he does the reps and he cares about it and like he's putting in the effort shows you that he thinks of himself as more than just a quarterback. He's a guy
Hmm.
who wants to beat you a lot of different ways, and he's very, very hungry to prove himself after kind of getting rejected at Ohio State and leaving and going to a place like Syracuse. So they have some tough quarterbacks on the
Yeah,
schedule.
but there's no Drake May on the schedule like there was
No,
last year.
there's no number three overall pick. There's nobody like that. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. It'll be interesting to see how things play out. Let's wrap up the defense here because I wrote this for the Athletic. I think you can't underestimate the value of Jalen Alderman, the transfer from Louisville. One thing Guidry told us is that he's really instinctual, really smart. People I think kind of took Corey Flagg for granted last year until the Clemson game, and then Corey Flagg made the play of the game, right? To wrap it up, tackling Cade Klubnik or whatever on fourth down and pushing him out of bounds or whatever. Like to me, Jalen Alderman, Louisville guy, played a whole lot over there. I think made 15 starts in his time there. And now you've got insurance for Kiko Mauinoa and Wesley Bassane. Kiko had the shoulder surgery, missed the spring. Basaint is entering his third year. Really, I think you need three guys at least that have veteran experience, and you've got that now with that group. So you can't underestimate Alderman. And the one thing I'll say is, he spoke highly of Derek Nicholson, who was his coach at Louisville 2 years ago. There were other teams that came out to get him. I think he visited Arkansas before he chose Miami. This is a big time player. I think he's more developed even than KJ Cloyd was, and KJ Cloyd turned out to be a pretty good player for Miami last year too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like you said, he's excellent. I mean, I don't even want to say insurance. I think he's going to play plenty regardless of
Yeah.
injuries or anything. So I don't want to say he's just insurance because he's going to get
No,
on the
he's gonna
field plenty.
play. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like, but yeah, like you said, I mean, you have Kiko who amazing last year, and then Basaint who you would hope to see him take another step forward after looking pretty solid for a lot of last year, and then Alderman, solid player to plug in there. And then you got all these, younger guys who didn't see the field a ton last year, like Popo Aguirre.
hmm
I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong.
Aguirre,
Uh,
but it's okay.
Yeah. Bobby Pruitt. Like they've got a lot of young, talented guys who, you know, you don't have to, like we talked about with the defensive line, you don't have to play them 30 snaps a game. They can play 10, and kind of rotate in and
15,
out
yeah.
with, yeah, 10, 15 snaps and get in there, make some plays, but you're not relying on these younger, less experienced guys. You have three guys with lots of starting experience, who are very solid players. And it just, the deeper you are, the better, kind of like I said, same thing we're talking about like the defensive line. Like depth is always good. Guys are always going to get hurt. Like you need to have that depth because if you have a big drop off from 1 to 2, I mean it's a bad situation if one guy goes down.
Yeah. One freshman I want to mention just because I think he has a chance to be pretty special here is Bobby Pruitt. I know the coaches were really excited about him. The impression I got is he might be the next generation, right? When we think of Kiko Mauinoa leaving, we think about Wesley Basaint gone, and kind of what's the future at that position. I think Aguirre and uh, Bobby Pruitt are the two guys that we got to watch here. Guidry said his instincts are just like on another level. And he can play a lot of, he plays bigger than he is. He comes off blocks the way you don't think, a guy should be able to come off a block. He's athletic like a safety and a hybrid player. That's what Guidry told me as far as describing Bobby Pruitt. And so I think, we talk about future guys to identify on defense. Justin Scott's number one, I think, on the defensive line. Bobby Pruitt's probably the number one guy at linebacker. And then in the secondary, you've kind of got more guys that have to prove themselves. But I think OJ Frederic would be one to watch for me among the freshmen.
Yeah, somebody I'm interested to see if they take a step forward and if they get some more playing time this year is Bobby Washington. I'm just
Yes.
I'm just intrigued by speed and he's so fast. I mean,
Yes.
you have a linebacker who's like your in your top three or four fastest guys on the team. I just want to see him play more and just get after guys. Like he runs like 22, 23 miles an hour. I just want to see that. Like that's just
hmm
incredible.
Yeah, you brought up speed, and one thing that I took away from my conversation with Cam Ward in Charlotte was the way he talked about Sam Brown at receiver. We can transition to the receiver position. We know what Miami's got. They're excited about Isaiah Horton. We know they trust Xavier Restrepo, who was 1,000-yard receiver last season. They've got a lot of faith in Jacoby George to be a big playmaker for them. But Sam Brown has a different level of speed. And one thing Cam Ward talked to me about was how they needed that. They've got guys that know how to beat zone coverage, that can find soft spots in zone. But I think Cam Ward really wanted a guy he could trust to throw the over the top ball to, the deep ball to. And one thing he told me when I was with him in Charlotte was Sam Brown is excellent at over the shoulder catches and beating guys in man coverage. And so I think when you look at what's the value of Sam Brown and what makes him unique and different on this Miami roster, it's exactly that. And I talked to Sam for a little while on Monday. He told me he ran 22.3 miles per hour on the catapult system here in the offseason. He's a 10.8 in the 100 meters champion long jumper. And the interesting thing about Sam Brown is his dad has been a tennis coach for a long time, I think, in the Georgia area. He actually played tennis from age 8 to 15. So his hand-eye coordination is really, really good. Point being here, Adam, as I discuss Sam Brown, is he's a unique, different kind of talent. He's not a guy who just played receiver, a guy who you look at his numbers, oh, he had 800 yards receiving. I think he could be pretty special here.
Yeah, I mean, the couple of years I've covered UM, they really haven't had that kind of burner starting at wide receiver. I mean, they had Tyler Harrell last year, who was incredibly fast, but he didn't get on the field much.
Yeah.
So if you have, like you said, that guy who can go over the top in man coverage and just take the top off of defense, I mean, that's so valuable. It brings so much to an offense beyond just like the actual numbers he puts up. He's just a deep threat. He's a deep threat on any given pass play, and that is just so important. And just drawing attention on defense, drawing a safety and getting two guys on him, potentially leaving, something over the middle for Xavier Restrepo or something. Although I will say, playing CFB 25, Jacoby George I feel like is always open over the top. So
Yeah.
they got two guys then. But yeah, no, Brown, I mean, I'm interested to see what he does. And he's also something you didn't mention, played under Shannon Dawson at Houston.
Yes.
Um, so he's got experience in the offense. You would think, hopefully, he's a quick learner and gets things down pat quickly. Builds that chemistry with Cam Ward because he wasn't here in the spring, and that he's ready to go and ready to fire on all cylinders a month from now.
Yeah. One thing Sam told me was he's caught. I asked him, so how many balls do you think you've caught from Cam? And I said 100, 200, 300, 400. And he goes, maybe 10,000. You know, like he's worked himself into that kind of a workload. So in 2 months, I don't know how many balls that is a day, but it's a whole lot of catches and chemistry. And I will say this, Cam Ward did a workout with Sam 6 weeks before he committed to Miami in Houston. Cam, of course, goes back to work out there. That's where he's from. And Sam showed up, played catch with him. And that's basically that and Shannon Dawson is what convinced Sam Brown to pick Miami over Texas A&M and Alabama, who both wanted him, by the way. So we will see what kind of season Sam Brown has, but I can't underestimate his value in the words of Cam Ward and other people around the program.
Yeah,
Um, Go
I
ahead.
just feel like this offense is gonna be. I think about this offense and I'm like, this offense should go. Like
Yes.
it should. I mean, like I'm not gonna say put a number on it, but like this should be a really, really, really good offense. Like there's no holes. Like you look at every position, and I really can't find a spot where I'm like, they could be better there.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we talk about tight ends, like we can go over that because they didn't do much last year, but like there's good players at every position. It's just really impresses me. It's the best offense. I mean, this is only my third season covering the team, but it's easily the best offense that I've covered. I expect it to be at least.
Yeah, and we can transition to tight end just because you brought that up. Cam McCormick is back for his ninth year, as you mentioned, and written about in the spring. He is a really good blocking tight end, but they want more production out of that position. And I think one big question mark, and I don't know that they're necessarily going to need this guy to produce a lot, but they do need him to show up confidently, and that's Elijah Arroyo, who, let's face it, when he came back from injury last season. kind of was scared. And I talked about that with him for a little bit, that you don't have confidence in yourself. Like your knee, oh, am I going to get hurt again? I don't want to miss any more time. I think his confidence was shaken. And I think that's going to be really important here in spring, that he reestablishes, not spring, but fall, that he really establishes that this fall with Cam Ward. And maybe they get him some passes early in the season so that he feels comfortable again. Because I look, Miami's got Riley Williams, they've got Jackson Carver, and they've got Elijah Lofton, who is going to be playing and I think have some special packages for himself in this offense. But uh, Elijah Arroyo, they need him to be good to give you an extra element in this offense. And I think for me, what I'm going to be watching is where's his mentality after game one? Is he physically there? Is he playing the way he's supposed to play? Does he have confidence in the knee and in his body the way that he should? I think that's going to be an important storyline for Miami.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. Because I asked him the same thing today when we spoke to him after practice,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed when I was watching him, it was really good to see because all spring he was practicing full go and everything, but he was wearing a knee brace. Today, no knee brace.
It's a good
Um,
sign.
yeah. So, and I asked him about that confidence because I mean, like I, if you know me, I'm not an athlete. I do not have an athlete's build. I've never torn my ACL, but in speaking with a lot of athletes who have torn their ACL, that's a more almost maybe even more so or more difficult than just getting back physically healthy
Yeah.
is that mental aspect and worrying about tearing it again, and feeling like you can cut and run and do everything you used to be able to do confidently at the same level. It's hard. I think people underestimate the mental aspect of coming back from that injury. And like you said, I agree, he did not look like himself last year when he was on the field, but he says he's back. Like he says he feels confident. I wouldn't expect him to say that he doesn't, but uh, that's what he says. He says that he feels like himself again, and that he's ready to play a big role in this offense. And if he is healthy and is confident, he can. I mean, like they're going to be throwing the ball around, and having a good pass catching tight end is so vital in today's game. He can be that guy if everything is working. He's talented enough. He's capable of doing it.
Yeah, I think the way I would describe Miami's tight end situation is this, and the way it affects the offense. They're going to be a great offense. I think they have a chance to be a complete offense if Elijah Arroyo comes back and and if not him, somebody else assumes that tight end position role and gives them something else to use. They will be complete if he or somebody else emerges. They're going to be great. I agree with you, but complete and great are two different things.
Yep. No, I agree. And between him, I mean, I'm really interested to see if Riley Williams takes another step in year two at UM. He's a very talented kid. I think he was top 100 prospect coming out of IMG. Like I want to see if he takes the next step. And then you mentioned Elijah Lofton. Uh, just the talk of spring camp. I think I might have mentioned it the last time I was on the pod, but like uh, I think the first day of spring, I watched him just shove a dude to the ground coming off the line, and I was like, okay, this kid's interesting. But he was the talk of spring. He's the talk of the first couple of days here, in fall. I think Mario said, and I don't think he said this lightly, that he reminds him of Ruben Bain's first,
Yeah.
set of camps at UM, and we also have that turn out with Ruben Bain. So, does that mean he's going to be a freshman All-American? Maybe, maybe not. But like, he's definitely an intriguing player, and definitely someone that I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on this year and see how they. We'll see how they use him. We'll see if they use him, lined up as a traditional tight end, as an H back. They, have him line up a running back like they did in the spring game. I mean, who knows? He's just a really talented guy.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Miami may save him for we may not see him involved very much early on in the year, especially if Elijah Arroyo is doing his job. But I think he's the kind of guy that we say through the first four, man, what happened to Elijah Lofton? And then all of a sudden, when Miami needs him, he's like delivering a death blow to somebody for them in a big win. I could see him,
He'll hit some wheel route against like
yeah,
I don't know,
Louisville or something.
against
Yeah,
Louisville or something, yeah, or FSU. He'll hit a wheel route and you'll be like, oh, here he is.
yep, yep. I think that's what we're going to see with him. All right, let's move to running back because obviously Miami went out and got Damian Martinez, and we got a little bit of information now officially from different people. Mark Fletcher said he suffered a Liz Frank injury. That was the rumor all summer. He basically confirmed it to me. Also injured his shoulder, had a little procedure done there as well. Which is why Miami went out and got Damian Martinez. They needed to have a big physical runner that they could count on. AJ Allen's a nice complimentary back. Chris Johnson's a nice speed back. Chris Wheatley, Humphrey, Jordan Lyle, all of those guys, the new guys who just arrived here, talented guys. I'm not saying they're not capable, but Damian Martinez is a 1,000-yard rusher, finished second in the Pac-12 in rushing last year. Ran for 900 yards as a freshman 2 years ago. He's 6 foot, 232 pounds. He runs close to 21 miles an hour. I think he told me 21 miles an hour in the Stanford game last year on one of his breakaway runs. So he is moving and he is big. And the one thing that I really like that I learned from Mark Fletcher is Mark Fletcher helped recruit him to Miami and really welcomed Damian with open arms. And Damian talked about that with me. He said Mark called me more than anybody else, and now they're locker mates. They share a locker. So this idea that guys are going to be selfish or upset because of their role, hey, maybe they don't get the ball as much as they want to. I think right now Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher have a good thing going, and I think that's encouraging to know going into the season.
Yeah, I think the thing that everyone's kind of known about running backs for 15, 20 years has fully filtered down the levels from the NFL down, that mileage is so important. If you want to go pro, you can't carry the ball 400 times in a season because
Yeah,
you're going to be worn down and beaten up. You need to protect yourself and stay healthy. I think of like somebody I think of watching Thad Franklin, who Miami fans know. Watching him in high school, he ran the ball. He was their offense in high school for a couple of years, and he was excellent. But he ran the ball. I mean, I'm going off the top of my head, probably 1,000 times in 4 seasons in high school, and it did not translate to college, and that might be for other reasons too. But I think that played a role in it. So I think Mark Fletcher knows that, and is happy to share the load, to be part of a running back rotation. He knows he'll get his touches as long as he's healthy. He's going to get touches. He's going to get plenty of touches. He's an incredibly talented running back. So the fact that and knowing him, having known him personally now since he was like a sophomore in high school, it doesn't surprise me. He's a good dude. Like the fact that he wants to share the running back load with someone else, and someone else who's very, very good, 1,000-yard rusher, um, doesn't really surprise me at all. And that should be a really good running back room between him and Martinez and AJ Allen. Now that Allen's healthy again,
yeah,
we'll see how much Chris Johnson, gets in the mix. And it should, the freshman, like it's a really good room.
yeah.
Like I said, I'm not surprised that Fletcher wants to, not get the ball 500 times in a year.
Yeah. And the one thing Martinez told me he likes about Miami's offense, and part of the reason he picked the Hurricanes is he likes the vertical offense. He likes the fact that Miami's receivers are going to be a headache. He averaged 16 carries and 6.1 yards per carry last season at Oregon State. I think he probably hits those benchmarks again. I think if not more. I mean, there could be games where he's got 10 carries and 120 yards, and by the third quarter, if Miami's up big, Mark Fletcher, AJ Allen, and Chris Johnson are the guys playing, and that's fine with him. I think, like you said, mileage is important. Not that he's gotten a ton of it, but 16 carries a game is a pretty healthy average. And he's run for 2,000 yards in college already. I'm sure he wants to keep his body fresh. So when he gets to the NFL, he's ready to be effective and to be, like he said, the number one running back taken at the end of this season. So we will see. Cam Ward, look, what else can we say about this dude that we haven't already said? Adam in the past, he looks special. My biggest takeaway from my time with him in Charlotte was his parents showing up to media day with him and getting a chance to meet his mom and his dad and listening to his mom interact in front of all of us in front of cameras and her basically sharing that she's a tough mom. She was tough on him. And she was a coach for more than 30 years, coached AAU basketball in Texas. Cam traveled, she traveled around coaching different girls. The family thought Cam might be playing basketball when he got to college, if he got to college. Ends up being a football player, no offers whatsoever. And when you look at Cam and you say, man, how does a guy who started off at the FCS level and then goes to Washington State and plays really well, end up at Miami? Well, it's because of his parents. It's because of the way he was raised. And yes, he was a no-star recruit, but the guy's got so much hunger, so much fire in him to win and be successful. And I think you see it from his parents. You see that same sort of They would fight over board games. Adam, I wrote about this for the Athletic. His parents would come to his games on Friday nights, and they would be in the team hotel playing board games. And Cam and his parents would get so fired up about Monopoly or whatever, whoever lost would flip the board. Like they would
Hmm?
literally knock it off the table because they were so mad. And that's the kind of competitor Cam Ward is, and that's why Mario Cristobal loves him and calls him an alpha leader, because I think at his core he doesn't accept losing. He doesn't accept and now he's done a lot of losing. He did a lot of it at Washington State. Now he's got a team around him that can win a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't had a chance to meet his parents, but like you said, um, everyone's raved about his personality. Like you said, Mario calls him an alpha. I mean, like he seems like he's the guy. Like he kind of radiates that personality and that competitiveness. I love. I think I noted when talking to other reporters today after we someone asked one of the players we spoke to about Cam. Every player mentions that he's a big trash talker. Every
Yes.
time you talk about it, it's like he's talking trash. And I asked a few players about that. And even during 7-on-7s, he's talking trash to his own teammates. Like, he's
Shador
got
Sanders, who he works out
Shedeur
with.
Sanders. Yeah.
Yes, all of them.
Um,
Kyron
yeah,
Jones.
yeah. Yeah, no, he's definitely I mean he seems like a trash talker and he's got that leadership personality. So I think he'll fit right in. Like he's already seems like he's fit in with the rest of the team. It seems like I mean it's he hasn't played a game yet, but it seems like a match made in heaven. It
Yeah,
seems perfect. So we'll
yeah.
see how it actually turns out, but it seems great right now.
It does. I wanted to get to some mailbag questions, and then you and I are going to check out of here just because we're already running on about an hour here of this episode. If that's cool with you, is that all right? We hit the
Yeah,
mailbag.
yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
All right. This is from Vaughn Kane, Vaughn underscore Kane on Twitter. He asked, does Mario finally have the talent on the roster to overcome his coaching? And then he puts in asterisk, dives under desk. What do you think? Is this team so talented in your mind that Mario can't screw this up?
Take a knee. Just take a knee. If you're up at the end of the game, just take a knee.
Yeah,
It's like one of the first things that always comes up when if I do like a radio show with someone from out of town and stuff. It's like, are they gonna do that again? And I'm like, I hope not. Mario and Shannon Dawson were really coy last year when it came to like the decision making at the end of the Georgia Tech game. I would really hope there's an analyst or someone on the staff who's just like, if X amount of time is on the clock, do this. Just don't you can't do that again. It was just so bad. It's still hard to believe. It's very rare where, a coaching decision so direct and easy like that costs you a game. You just can't do dumb stuff like that. Once is bad enough. If you do it a second time, this year, I mean, last year it cost them the chance to go 8-4. This year with this team and the schedule, you lose a game like that, it could cost you a playoff spot. It could cost you a spot in the ACC title game. Like you
yeah,
can't do that stuff again. So
yeah.
I think yes. To answer the question, yes, I think the team is good enough. I would hope the team is good enough. I would hope that there's no major coaching mistakes that would cost them as dearly as it did last year.
I think the best teams, as long as I've been doing this, the best teams don't even need coaches. They police themselves. They get themselves out of trouble. They make the plays. I'm not saying coaching doesn't matter. I'm more of a firm believer that 90% of games are ones with Jerry's and Joe's and lost by coaches. 10% is lost by coaches. Um, I think forcing something that's not there is a mistake. And I think that's not what Mario's going to do with this team. I think last year, the Georgia Tech loss was more about pride. They wanted to run the clock out after basically playing pretty bad against Georgia Tech. You had a kid in Don Chaney who was closing in on 100 yards. We're going to shove the ball down their throat and we're going to send them at. And it was a mistake. And I think it humbled Mario in ways that we probably will never know, maybe until after he retires, what it was like to go through that week for him. But the bottom line is, I think Miami's leadership is strong enough, especially with Cam Ward at quarterback, to survive. You know, to survive any potential letdowns. And I will say this about Miami's coaching staff. They made the right adjustments. Lance Guidry went to a 3-3-5 stack last year. I thought he did a good job. And it sounds to me like, Miami's offensive coordinator, from the way I led my story the other day, He's not sitting there saying, "Hey, you guys, running my offense." Shannon Dawson said he's not above stealing plays, right, from other people, and he's basically done that with Damian Martinez and Sam Brown and Cam Ward. He's going to run stuff that they know how to do, and the fact that he's willing to do that and not be stubborn tells me that that's the right decision, the right sort of approach. So, to
Yeah.
answer that question, I don't think the coaching staff's going to get in the way.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned Shannon Dawson, like he's supposed to be an air raid guy, which my dog has very strong opinions on. Um,
Yeah,
but he's not afraid to just run the ball. Like he's
yeah,
got capable running backs. He's gonna run the ball if he needs to.
yep. This is from Columbus Kane. Any idea what's special about the cleats that Mesidor has to wear? Was not having a special cleats part of what kept him out at the end of the season? Just curious. My understanding, Adam, and you can add to this if you've got anything, but my understanding was his feet were basically in bad shape and he needed the special cleats to basically deal with the pain and some other discomfort that he was dealing with last year.
Yeah, that's basically my understanding as well. That I guess the cleats are specially like crafted. I don't know if they're maybe molded to his feet exactly or the
Right.
exact details of it, but yeah, basically to keep him able to play and not be in pain after those foot injuries. Like that's about the gist of what I know about him. But I was happy to see him in cleats on the field in drills today.
Yeah, it was good that he's out there and we're not just talking about those cleats. Armando Izaguirre, AY2 Mondo on Twitter says Damian Martinez, Cam Ward, Xavier Restrepo is the best Miami quarterback, running back, wide receiver combo since.
I mean, you've been on the beat longer than me, so I mean, the best one I've seen so far is probably, Henry Parrish and Tyler Van Dyke and Xavier Restrepo. So that's my vote because I've been on the beat for a couple of years. So you're better suited to answer that question than me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was the quarterback when Duke Johnson was here. It was Brad Kaya, I think, as a true freshman. I think they did, yeah, 2014 they played together. And then you had Philip Dorsett, who was a first round pick at receiver, as well as Clive Walford at tight end. I would say offensively, they had Braxton Berrios as well. He was a freshman on that team. I would say offensively, this is probably the best trio between running back, quarterback, and receiver since the 2014 team, with those guys, with Kaya as a true freshman, and Duke Johnson in the backfield. Just my opinion.
Sounds
Um,
right.
yeah. Let's bounce to the next question here. Is this the year we finally win 10 games and the ACC championship? This is from Brent Peterson, B Pete 9121 on Twitter.
Yeah.
Is
Oh,
it?
sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Is
Yeah. Drink
it
drink the
is.
Kool-Aid. Drink the Kool-Aid. It's August. This is the time to feel yourself, the time to tell lies, the time to feel good about things and be optimistic. Yes, they're going to win 10 games. They're going to go to the ACC title game. They're going to win the conference, go to the playoff. Yeah, sure.
I look, I think they're definitely going to win 10 games. My thing is, I'm not sure if they're going to win the ACC championship. And it may not matter. They may get into the college football playoff with or without the ACC championship. I'm picking them to make the college football playoff this year. This is as good a team as Miami's had in 2 decades, both sides of the line of scrimmage. And I think that's going to count for a whole lot. My thing is, I don't know if it's going to be them or Florida State who wins. I think Florida State's advantage is the fact that Mike Norvell did it already last year. He's got some veterans on both sides of the ball that are back, including a really, I think good offensive line, and running back. And Mike Norvell's a good coach, and he's got a lot of continuity on his coaching staff. I think that counts for something in college football. So it'll be Miami and Florida State. I think they will play twice. I think the ACC will finally get two Miami FSU games in the same year. And it's
Just
and
in
that
time, too.
just in time too. Yes, and I think it will happen. Um, I'm just not sure if Miami wins the ACC. I haven't decided yet, and I'm doing my oddly specific predictions. By the way, Adam, I just did another podcast with Chris Vanini, and my article will be coming out August 15th. I hit on 33% of my oddly specific predictions last year, which I think, hey, if I'm hitting 330, does that get me on the Yankees when you're in charge?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. We need some contact hitters.
All right, all
Oh,
right.
but we gotta. Were they good, like big predictions? Like, because you need some power too.
Well, listen, I predicted. I mean, some of these were oddly specific, but I hit three of the four playoff teams. I got Michigan, I got Texas and Washington correct. I said Michael Penix was going to win the Heisman. He finished second. I said Michigan's running back duo was going to run for 32 touchdowns. They ran for exactly 32 touchdowns.
Okay, that's a homer.
I said Penn State was going to lead the Big Ten in sacks, and that Manny Diaz would get hired away by an ACC team at the end of the season. Guess
Pretty
what?
good. Pretty
Pretty
good.
good, pretty good. So if you want to check out that podcast that I did with Vanini, we made some pretty bold predictions. Florida fans are probably going to hate me, but we
Well,
made some pretty bold predictions there as well. That'll be coming out. My story will be out August 15th. But 33%, I felt pretty good about myself, brother.
yeah, that's a Hall of Fame batting average.
All right.
Not a great free throw percentage though.
No, no, not at all. All right. This is from Andrew V17. What's the biggest positive and negative things that have stood out so far in the first two practices? Andrew, I don't think there's been enough, right? That to really gauge any of that. And I don't think any of us will really know because we're not allowed to watch practice.
Yeah,
So
maybe we'll get a better idea. Like, I mean, there's Canes Fest on Sunday.
yeah,
We'll get a chance to watch that, and maybe we'll get a little better of an idea. But like for those, for people who aren't in the media, we basically get to watch individual drills, and we get to watch like maybe a little bit of 7-on-7. But that's all we really see in practice. So it's hard to say.
yeah. This is from King Reezy on Twitter. Seems like expectations are sky high as always at the beginning of the year. Seems like Mario feels and accepts the palpable pressure to win this year. Do you agree? Does he accept the pressure? Yeah, I think without question. I think he knows that this is a big year for him. This is a big year for the program. Year three, look, there's a lot of guys entering year three that have some pressure on them. Billy Napier is one of them. You look around the rest of college football, there's other guys that are in year three that Brent Venables at Oklahoma. They're going into the SEC. They won 10 games last year. He's got a stud young quarterback. There's pressure on Oklahoma to be good in the SEC. Are they going to do it? I don't know. But I think Mario Cristobal has built this the right way. I think he feels confident in it and that they're going to win this year. He's not going to come out and say, "Hey, we're going 12 and 0 and winning the ACC," but he is going to say, "Hey, I feel really good about this roster," and that's what he said to me and other reporters around this team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and you mentioned, Billy Napier, obviously very easy to compare him and Mario. Their records are very similar. They're both entering year three, both with very impatient fan bases
Yep.
who can get kind of testy if things don't go right. Uh, so I think this week one game is going to be very interesting. It's going to set the narrative for the whole season. I think Mario has a lot more runway than Billy Napier does.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure.
both by virtue of, I mean, one, recruiting fixes a lot of problems, and Mario's recruited extremely well, and definitely better than Billy Napier has at Florida. Though Napier's done okay. Um, so he's recruited very well. So there's hope to sell people that, people can believe in that this team's going to do well. Plus, if Miami loses week one, okay, it's on the road, it's Gainesville, it's hot, and the schedule's not that difficult ahead of them. Florida does not have that luxury. They have the most difficult schedule in the country. If they lose that week one game, there's only so many other 50% or better chance of wins ahead
Yeah.
on the schedule. So things, if they lose that game, things can get ugly quickly in Gainesville. I think if it's an anxiety game, an anxiety bowl, as I think is the joke on some podcasts and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's more of an anxiety bowl for Florida than Miami. But they're both in similar spots. It'll be interesting to see how the season plays out for both of them. I think Mario's under less pressure than Billy Napier, but if things don't go well this year, then there's a lot of pressure on Mario.
Yeah, I think some other interesting people, isn't Lincoln Riley entering his third year at USC? They're not feeling too good about what happened last season. That's another sort of there's a lot of I got to go back and look at all the year three guys in college football, but there's a lot of them that are a little nervous going into this season. I think Mario, without question, is welcoming, and I think he's confident in what he's built. So we will see what happens. Adam, I appreciate it, brother. You gave me so much time today. We did a long, this is an hour and 15-minute show that people will have to digest, but I hope people make sure to read you over at the Sun-Sentinel, follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter account again?
Yeah, you can follow me at AB Lichtenstein. And yes, sorry, I'm a yapper. I like to talk.
Oh no, listen, I welcome it, man. I needed a good conversation. Carlos Ledo has been slacking. He's enjoying his wedding anniversary out at Disney World. He won't be back till tomorrow. So for those of you hoping to hear Carlos, he will be back at some point. But hey, Adam is he's earning his keep here, man. He's This is the second time we bring him on the show. He's I'm having fun conversation with him. And do you have a podcast your own at some point, or what's kind of the plan for
No,
you, dude?
no, I don't. I've thought about it and I've tossed the idea around to my bosses. It's just never kind of come together. So I've thought about it. I listen to a ton of podcasts, including yours. Um, so maybe one day.
All right. Well, hopefully soon. And if not, we'll happily continue to bring you on here whenever we can and work it out.
Sounds good. I love coming on.
All right, Adam. Thanks so much, man. It was fun.
Yep, thanks for having me.